what happened in Minnesota in those two incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were they domestic terrorists, as you said to the country?
My condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happened.
Is that an apology for what you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets.
I'll repeat my question, reclaiming my time. Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
As you know, there's ongoing investigations that are being led by the FBI.
But you didn't wait for the investigation, did you? You didn't wait for the evidence. You proclaimed that they were domestic terrorists at the time. Why did you do that?
And you didn't wait to attack our law enforcement.
Why did you do that?
We're going into a dangerous situation.
Why did you call them domestic terrorists?
Because our ICE officers and our HSI officers that day risked their lives to protect that scene. So evidence could be reclaimed. So it could be used in the investigation. Because those violent rioters that were
there. So you're proud of the fact that you called them domestic terrorists? Is that what you're telling America?
HSI officers put their lives on the line to protect that scene, so evidence so we could have.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But you told a lie about them. You said that they were domestic terrorists. Do you regret that?
The atmosphere inside the hearing room shifted almost immediately. What was supposed to be another routine oversight session quickly became something much more uncomfortable for the Department of Homeland Security. Because when Representative Jamie Raskin began questioning Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, he wasn't interested in political talking points. He wanted answers. Specifically, he wanted answers about something that happened just hours after 2 American citizens were killed by federal agents in Minnesota. Within 2 hours of the incident, before investigators had even finished securing the scene, Secretary Noem went on national television and declared that the 2 victims, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, had committed acts of domestic terrorism. That statement immediately spread across news networks and social media. And for the families of the 2 victims, it changed everything. Because once the label, domestic terrorist, enters the public conversation, it doesn't just describe an event, it defines how the entire country views the people involved. But during the hearing, Raskin presented a different picture. He spoke about who those individuals were, according to their families. Renee Good, he said, was someone who tried to give people hope even during difficult times. Alex Preddy was described as a Boy Scout, a choir member, and someone who loved the outdoors. His family said he had the kind of personality that lit up every room he entered. And yet within hours of their deaths, the government had already reached a conclusion about them. A conclusion that had not been confirmed by any investigation. So Raskin asked the question that seemed impossible to avoid. Based on what you know today, were they domestic terrorists? Secretary Noem didn't answer directly. Instead, she expressed condolences to the families and explained that investigations were still ongoing. But that response only led to an even more uncomfortable follow-up. Because as Raskin pointed out, the administration did not wait for any investigation when the accusation was first made. The label had been applied almost immediately. So the congressman asked again. If you didn't wait for the investigation then, why wait for it now? The room grew quiet. Because suddenly the hearing wasn't just about policy or politics anymore. It was about accountability. And about whether the most serious accusation in American law had been applied without evidence.
Chairman, we're fighting for American citizens, Madam Secretary, because your ICE agents shot them in the face and killed them, and each person you see up on this dais today represents 800,000 American citizens. And you should know that as a former member of Congress. Now, her brother said that Renee Good was someone who could make you believe things were going to be okay despite all the hardship because she chose optimism. Alex Preddy was a Boy Scout, a choir member, an outdoorsman from Green Bay who lavished attention on his beloved dog, Jewel. His sister called her brother someone who had a way of lighting up every room that he walked into. But only a few hours after they were gunned down by your agents, you called Renee a domestic terrorist. You said Alex committed an act of domestic terrorism. Alex's parents responded to your calling their son a domestic terrorist. They said, the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Now I want to give you a chance before the entire country to correct your false and defamatory claim. Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
Congressman, what happened in Minnesota in those two incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were they domestic terrorists, as you said to the country?
My condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happened.
Is that an apology for what you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets
I'll repeat my question, reclaiming my time. Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
As you know, there's ongoing investigations that are being led by the FBI.
Oh, but you didn't wait for the investigation, did you? You didn't wait for the evidence. You proclaimed that they were domestic terrorists at the time. Why did you do that?
And you didn't wait to attack our law enforcement.
Why did you do that?
They're going into a dangerous situation.
Why did you call them domestic terrorists?
Is our ICE officers and our HSI officers that day risked their lives to protect that scene, so evidence could be reclaimed, so it could be used in the investigation. Because those violent rioters that were there.
So you're proud of the fact that you called them domestic terrorists? Is that what you're telling America?
HSI officers put their lives on the line to protect that scene, so evidence so we could have.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But you told a lie about them. You said that they were domestic terrorists. Do you regret that?
I offer my condolences to those families. And again,
based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists?
There's ongoing investigations, and so I
can't. So you still don't know? You think that's an open question?
I would think you would want there to still be investigations going into these situations.
Well, you stated the conclusion 2 hours after they were killed that they were domestic terrorists. I wanted to give you an opportunity to correct the record, not just for their family, but for everybody in America who believes in the truth and fairness and honesty.
In every situation, as facts come out, we relay.
You know, your acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, came before Congress. He said he had no knowledge whatsoever that Alex Preddy and Renee Good were domestic terrorists. None. This is your guy. He said that. He admitted that that was wrong. Why won't you admit it?
I will tell you the investigation's still ongoing, and
So do you regret speaking before the investigation?
I would say that in those situations,
you regret that?
Chaotic scene on the ground, we relay information to the American people that they're asking for. And as things change, situations change.
People were asking you whether they were domestic terrorists? And you decided that they were before the investigation?
As we learn more,
You don't want to say anything to their families?
I did. I said condolences.
For what? How about an apology for what you said about their loved ones?
My heart is with them, and we will continue to stand with them as they get a complete investigation into these situations.
All right. Well, let me ask you some questions of law if you can't handle the facts. Very simple questions of law, not trick questions. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person for engaging in peaceful protest and nothing else? That's a yes or no question.
Each instances in peaceful protest, no, it's not.
Okay, good. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person for filming them on a public street? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person just because that person is lawfully carrying a holstered firearm under the Second Amendment in state law?
No.
And finally, yes or no, is it lawful for federal agents to shoot an innocent person or even a criminal suspect just for driving away from them, according to the Supreme Court?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got the law right, and I hope you would rethink what you said about two good, honest, faithful American citizens and what that means to their families when you say that as Secretary of Homeland Security.
The exchange between Representative Jamie Raskin and Secretary Kristi Noem became one of the most tense moments of the hearing. But what made the moment so striking wasn't shouting or dramatic speeches. It was repetition. Over and over again, Raskin asked the same question. And over again, the answer never quite came. Earlier that week, Secretary Noem had publicly described the deaths of 2 Americans as acts of domestic terrorism. The statement was definitive, clear, and widely broadcast. But when the congressman revisited the claim during the hearing, the certainty was suddenly gone. Instead, the explanation shifted to something else entirely. The chaos of the situation. Information coming from agents on the ground. The need for further investigation. Raskin listened carefully to each explanation. Then he returned to the original issue. Because by this point, another key detail had already emerged. The acting IC director, Todd Lyons, had testified before Congress that he had no knowledge whatsoever that Renee Good and Alex Prey were domestic terrorists. None. In fact, he had already acknowledged that the earlier characterization was incorrect. So now the question became even more direct. If your own agency has backed away from the claim, why won't you? Once again, the answer turned back toward condolences, sympathy for the families, recognition of the tragedy, but still no acknowledgement that the accusation itself might have been wrong. And that moment, that refusal to clearly correct the record, is what transformed the hearing into something much larger. Because in Washington, apologies are often political, but accusations like domestic terrorist carry consequences that last far beyond a news cycle. For the families involved, the damage was already done. And the hearing made one thing painfully clear. They were still waiting for something simple. Not condolences, but accountability. After several minutes of back-and-forth questioning, Representative Jamie Raskin changed his strategy. If the facts about the incident were going to remain disputed, perhaps the law could provide a clearer framework. So he began asking Secretary Kristi Noem a series of straightforward legal questions. Not complicated ones. Not trick questions. Just simple yes or no scenarios. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot someone who is engaged only in peaceful protest? No. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot someone for filming them on a public street? No. Is it lawful to shoot someone simply for legally carrying a firearm under the Second Amendment? Again, the answer was no. One by one, the legal boundaries were laid out clearly. Each answer reinforced the same principle: federal force must follow strict rules. But as those answers accumulated, the larger implication became harder to ignore. If those actions are illegal, then the justification for labeling two Americans as domestic terrorists becomes even more significant. Because that label suggests something far more serious than a misunderstanding or a chaotic situation. It suggests intent. It suggests violence against the country itself. And yet during the hearing, there was still no explanation for how that conclusion had been reached so quickly. The investigation, Secretary Noem insisted, was still ongoing. But the accusation had already been made. Publicly. Nationally. And long before investigators had delivered any final findings. By the time Raskin concluded his questioning, the tone in the room had noticeably shifted. Not because the exchange had been loud or dramatic, but because the questions had been simple. And the answers had revealed just how much remained unresolved.